Welcome, Voznasenka students, to quarter three. Sorry about some changes this quarter that were sort of last minute. You guys have a new schedule. We discussed some possible ways to make your learning more productive for everybody and be more accessible. And so we decided to do 2 videos a week with the lessons that I would have taught you on Mondays, and then the check-ins, and Dennis will be giving you that information. So let's get into it. So this week is slightly off a little bit because we didn't Zoom and have the intro to the lit on Monday. So going forward, your weekly outline will be the same, except it won't say Zoom on it. So taking the Zoom out, intro to lit, discussion questions, discussion summary. Today, hopefully you can finish your summary for notes for Death by Dirt, which I will go over momentarily. Then Wednesday, read the article, The Deception of Columbus, and answer those questions, and I will have another video for you for that. Thursday, you will complete your pre-assessment paragraph, and then Friday, finish notebook, submit, and work on iReady, hopefully getting 30 minutes for the week. Which is also something you can do anytime during the week when you finish your activity for the week. Instead of going ahead necessarily and rushing through it, work on iReady. All right, so this quarter overview, some questions that we'll be looking at and the skills that we will be assessing. This is what we will be learning throughout the quarter and really what we'll be focusing on. So the questions that I want you to be able to think about and to be able to understand and articulate are: how do words affect us? Should history textbooks be taken as fact? Why does it matter to know who is telling the story? Why is it important to know stories from people different than you? And the skills that we'll be working on are: I can write an argumentative paragraph from multiple sources. I can analyze how 2 texts on the same subject present information differently. I can present an argument. I can summarize an article. I can explain how word choice affects how information is perceived. I can label, identify, and mimic a sentence. Those are the skills that you will be learning throughout the quarter and will be assessed on this quarter. Okay, well, let's get into it. This week notebook, which I'm sure you all have had a chance to look at by now. The first page, there are 3 discussion questions. Then we have some summary notes for this story, Christopher Columbus, Death by Dirt. Then we have an article that presents Christopher Columbus in a very specific way and some discussion questions about that, and then a pre-assessment paragraph. So let's look at this book that I'm having you read this quarter. This book is called How They Croaked by Georgia Bragg. It is short stories about how famous people throughout history have died, like the actual truth of their lives and how they died. We are not reading the whole book, we're just reading specific stories from the book, but we are reading a good half of this book throughout the quarter. So let's read the introduction together and talk about it. Warning, if you don't have the guts for gore, do not read this book. Remember when you watched Bambi for the first time and you got to the part where Bambi's mom dies and the sweet movie about a family of deer turns into a horror flick? What the heck was that? You thought. And in that second you realized that if Bambi's mom can die, so can everybody else. How They Croaked is like reliving Bambi's mom's death over and over again, except it's worse because it's the blood, sweat, and guts of real people. In this book are the true stories of how some of the most important people who ever lived died. You probably don't know how George Washington, Cleopatra, or Beethoven ate it because every other book you've ever read skipped over that part. The reason is getting sick and dying can be a big, ugly mess, and mostly it's just sad. There are nice things to say about everybody, but this book is full of bad news. There are funny crying parts and disgusting stupid parts and hideous cool parts, but it's pretty much one train wreck after another. And who can tear their eyes away from a train wreck? Whether someone had a lung explode or was stabbed to death, died of poison, or of a sore throat, there is someone to blame, fingers to point. Looking back from where we sit now, people a long time ago sure did some dumb stuff, and it's definitely the kind of stuff worth writing about. Even though everybody in this book has been dead a long time, reading about their last dying days will make your toes curl. But these stories will also fascinate you and make you realize how lucky you are to live in a world with painkillers and x-rays and soap and 911. Who knows, maybe people in the future will look back at us and wonder what the heck were they thinking. So here's a warning. Take care of yourself, the world, and everybody in it. But if you don't have the guts for gore, do not read this book. All right, now go to your discussion questions in your notebook. Go ahead and pause the video now if you need to get to it. And let's look at those discussion questions. Okay, the first question, how do words affect us? Pause now and answer that question. How do words affect us? Okay. The next question, how will the tone of how they croaked affect our reading about death? How will the tone of how they croaked affect our reading about death? Go ahead and pause and answer that question. Okay, and question 3, why does it matter to know who's telling a story? Why does it matter to know who is telling a story? Pause and answer that question. Okay, now that you have had the chance to answer those questions, let me give you a little bit of ideas of different things from how they croaked. So you'll notice that in the story, she has what is kind of a humorous tone. She's sort of silly. She uses words like horrendous and freight train and train wreck. That make it a little bit light. So how does that affect our reading? Those words are affecting us, right? Question 1, they affect how we feel about it, how we think about it. It's easier to stomach something that might be gross if someone does it in a funny way, okay? And knowing that Georgia Bragg is just a historian from now, you know, she's a current historian, she's just interested in history, that should keep our mind that she has had to read other people's accounts of these history to write them down. She isn't the person that necessarily experienced these firsthand. And who experienced the history and wrote it down will change how much we believe them, or if we want to believe them, or what their motivations were at that time, because everybody's perspective is different. Okay, so let's pause the video now and go find in your notebook this page, Summary Notes, Christopher Columbus, Death by Dirt. I'm going to read this, I'm going to go over this slide with you, and then I'm going to pause, and I want you to read that article if you have not before you play the rest of this video, because I will help you kind of look at how to do those. So, in Summary Notes, these are the pieces of information that we need when we summarize something. What that means is that we need to know, like, if this was written in the newspaper, they're going to focus on what happened, who, where, when, why, and how. The bonus part there, words, is because I want you to be able to recognize words that are emotionally charged, words that are those words that might be affecting how we read and perceive what is going on, okay? They might be funny words, they might be sad words, they might be angry words, and I'll help you with those as we go, okay? So what in our summary notes is what the article is about. What is the main idea that is trying to be conveyed? Who is the person, who is the main person involved in the thing that happened? Or maybe a couple people that are involved, but like the main people that were involved, right? Where did this event happen? Where did the what take place? Is there anything important about that place that we need to know? When did this event take place? The what? Is there anything about that time in history that's important in our perception of the event that happened? Why does the event happen? What made it happen? Was there a cause? What was the cause? How did it happen? What were like sort of the steps towards it happening. And then the final, as I said, is any of those emotionally charged words, because we're going to pull those out because those are separate from summary. So we want to recognize that they're different, okay? So right now, pause. If you have not already read Christopher Columbus, Death by Dirt, please read it now or listen to the audio, and then continue this video. Okay, now that you've read Christopher Columbus, Death by Dirt, let me begin the summary notes with you a little bit and help you out, and you'll finish these on your own. So what Christopher Columbus, Death by Dirt was about is Christopher Columbus's death, right? The death of Christopher Columbus. We're starting kind of easy on summary notes, a little bit more obvious, so that we can be successful learning this skill, right? So what the story is about is the death of Christopher Columbus. Who is the story about? Christopher Columbus. Now, who is Christopher Columbus? What do we know about him? He was credited with discovering America. America for Spain. Okay, these are the important kind of thing about Christopher Columbus from the beginning of the story. Where does it happen? Well, it happens in Spain and the Atlantic Ocean and Americas. Okay. If there's any other important details about where, you want to put those in now. Okay, I'm not going to do everything on this. The when should be fairly obvious because it tells you right on the front page. So these ones are, I don't know if you can see that right there. Yeah, focus. It tells you, right, that he was born in Italy. It happened between August and October in 1451 is when he died. Oh, sorry, that's when he was born. I read that wrong. And he dies in May 20th of 1506. And what is important about that time in history that she put in this article? Like the fact that they thought the world was really small. They weren't sure if the world was round. They weren't sure where India was. They were trying to get to Asia. Those important things about the time in history. Well, why does he die? Well, dirt. He gets really sick from being really, really dirty, right? There's a lot of germs, dirt, being at sea, on a boat, okay? And then how is what sort of actually kind of the steps that ended up killing him, okay? He got gout and scurvy and other things, and he was actually, they think that he died of Reader's syndrome. Okay. I am being brief. I want you to put a little bit more detail. Those things that I'm saying, like, okay, the death of Christopher Columbus. Is there anything about Christopher Columbus other than this that's important to note? Where did it take place? What's important to note about where? What was important in that time in history? Why did he die? Is there anything else I missed? I spelled Reader's syndrome wrong. R-I-T-E-R. Reader's syndrome. What is that? What killed him? How did that happen? Okay. So add more detail than I'm giving you right now. And then the words that are emotionally charged, because we already noted that the author of this book, Georgia Bragg, has a humorous tone, you're going to look for things that are funny, like the word shipwrecked himself. Shipwrecked. Okay, just going to give you one. I want you to find a few more. All right, so make sure that you finish this, add more detail than I have, and I will have another video for you tomorrow with information about how to complete the rest of the notebook. See you soon.